Welcome, everyone. We begin tonight's presentation with a very special thank you to everyone who participated in and supported the Victorian Harvest Ball that was held this past Sunday. It was a spectacular event, kicking off our Parkesburg 150th anniversary festivities, and all of us had a marvelous time. It was a prelude of things to come. This evening, we will feature Gerald Treadway, who will highlight Parkesburg's history, as well as the centennial celebration that was held in 1972. In the first part of a two-part presentation, a celebration 150 years in the making. Jerry served as a former teacher as well as a former Parkesburg Borough Council member, but you might know him as Uncle Sam or Parkesburg's resident historian. We are most fortunate that Jerry is joining the program in a pre-recorded interview in which he shares a treasure trove of knowledge about Parkesburg history. And now it is my great honor to welcome Jerry Treadway.
March 1st, 1872, the borough became official government of the town. Prior to that, it was known as Fountain Inn, as a part of Salisbury Township. And the officials in town thought it was time to have a borough because of the population, the growing town. The early history of Parkesburg relates to the railroad coming through town in the 1830s. And because of the railroad expansion, the railroad repair shops are located here in the 1830s to repair the new technology of the time, the train. As part of the deal with the Park family, who owned a lot of the land in town at that time, the railroad people decided to put the railroad repair shops here because of a land dispute with the Park family. And out of that deal they made, the town's name was changed from Fountain Inn to Parkesburg. So that's how the name of Parkesburg came about, because of a large landowner, mainly to the east side of the area. Okay, the railroad stayed until the 1860s when it went bankrupt, and it was purchased by the Pennsylvania Railroad, which was a growing railroad at the time. Realized that the railroad was the new industrial revolution of the early mid 1800s. The railroad left and Parkesburg was in need of an industry. In 1872, Horace Veal brought his ironworks from Hibernia Park, north of Coatesville, to Parkesburg, where they made charcoal iron boiler tubes for steam-powered engines, like trains, steamships, and whatever else you may have steam power. That was the hour of the day. Well, when he brought his iron company here, the town grew and prospered for many years, and the iron company produced thousands and thousands of tons of charcoal iron boiler tubes for the next 50 years, closing down in 1926. During that time, from 1872 until 1926, Veal provided the town with everything you would need as far as a country town in the middle of an agricultural part of the country. Among those famous things that we can remember, or we had back 100 years ago or more, was we had a racetrack south of town. As you leave town, there's a road called Racetrack Road. The gentlemen of the time had nice fancy horses where they would race them initially on the streets of Parkesburg. But around 1900, Veal and his horse friends decided to build a racetrack south of town on Racetrack Road. The only remnant of that left is the sign along the road says Racetrack Road. And at the top of the hill, there are some, a slight outline of the racetrack area. Other things Veal liked to have at the time, modern technology. Modern technology of the early 1900s was aeroplane. The airplane was a new invention from the Wright brothers, but he came to Parkesburg in the early 20s, a short period of time from the Wright brothers until Parkesburg had an airport. Presently, the airport is in the area behind the Parkesburg VFW. It's in the housing development. Many of those people in those houses are living in the site of the Parkesburg airport. And many barnstormers landed here. They had an airport. You could get an airplane ride, a new thing in the 1920s. Another interesting thing that Beale liked to have, he liked to have modern things for the people of Parkesburg to enjoy. For example, semi-pro baseball. The site of Minch Park today is where the Pico Ironmen, Parkesburg Iron Company baseball players, played baseball for many years. It was noted that major league teams would come to the town in their off season or after season and play exhibition games for the people in the town. We had many famous teams come here and play. The Philadelphia Athletics, the Philadelphia Phillies. Incidentally, in 1927, the Parkesburg Ironmen beat the Phillies 3-0 in Parkesburg, 1927. Other teams that came, the Boston Red Sox, the Detroit Tigers, and we had many famous baseball players of the era play here. Babe Ruth played baseball on Mintz Field baseball field, where we have it today. The field is the same location. Home plate is the same location. Ty Cobb played baseball there. Connie Mack, when he was a young man, played baseball there. So we had many famous ball players walk on that field and play baseball. Another thing Mr. Beale liked was automobiles. In 1909, he owned 4 automobiles of 29 that were registered in Chester County. And he had many trips around the country in automobiles. At that time, only people with money or wealth could afford an automobile, which cost maybe $2,000 at the time. He was noted for that. Another thing Mr. Beale liked to have was entertainment for his town was basketball. He built a basketball hall at the site of the present-day Parkesburg Free Library in that area near the Baptist Church. Built that in 1919, and he hired men to play baseball for the Parkesburg Ironmen team. This lasted for several years until Mr. Beale paid the players to play basketball and baseball. So what happened? He paid them well, and consequently, he had the best team in the area, Chester County, Lancaster County, and Delaware County. What happened? They were always winning the games. So people got a little tired of this. And the Eastern League, which he was a part of at the time, took him to court because of his administrative techniques he used to get good basketball players who played for Parkesburg. That lasted for several years until the iron company ceased to be in existence in 1926. So consequently, that disappeared from the scene, as did the baseball teams. Another exciting thing at the time was radio. Radio is a new technology spreading around the country. So Mr. Beale had to have the new technology for Parkesburg. And out over on Beale Drive, on the south side of Beale Drive, he built a radio station with large towers that would live broadcast from Parkesburg in the 1920s. A lot of experimental radio was done at that time in the early 20s, and they were very active in that experimental development of radio. Beale also had a lot to do with the establishment of real estate. A lot of the houses built, especially on the south side of town, were built in the early 1900s through Beale's efforts to get a nice resident and home for his employees. Crystal Spring Park, we know it today as Crystal Spring Apartments. That area was developed in the 1910 era for people to come to Parkesburg to enjoy an outdoor park. They had a boating lake, which is still there somewhat. They had a dance hall. They had rides. They had a picnic grove. And the thought of the time was people came to the country to get fresh air, enjoy the scenery. So in the early 1900s, they came by trolley car from cities east and west to come to Parkesburg to go to Crystal Spring Park. This was an active community until the mid-30s, when the automobile made it very easy for people to go to some other place for entertainment, like the cities or Lancaster to a park, or to Lenape Park, south of Westchester. And the park became an auction site for many years. And eventually in the 1970s, it became a residential apartment area, which it still is today. The north side of town, Main Street, is the oldest part of town, with its early development and its old structures, dating back clear to the 1700s. The Fountain Inn on Main Street was where the original post office was in the 1830s, and became quite a busy thoroughfare. That's where a lot of the commercial establishments were started. The Parkesburg Banks was started in a building there, the large brick building on Main Street near Rocco's Restaurant was contained the original bank founded in the 1870s. That part of town was very busy store-wise and up until the 1900s, when the trolley system came through Parkesburg and everything shifted to the south side of town on First Avenue, creating a business district on the south side of town, as well as a business district on the north side of town in the Main Street area. So that's why Parkesburg has two business districts, or two centers of commerce. Being a country town on the western side of Chester County, it was a very agricultural oriented town. A lot of merchants supplied farmers with the necessary feed, the needs for their animal stock. They also had a lot of farms that would bring milk in large cans to the Parkesburg station off of Main Street and ship it to Lancaster or Philadelphia on the milk train. This is an early development to help sustain the farmers in the area. With the coming of the Iron Company in 1872 from Hibernia, the town prospered, as with many of the things that I had mentioned before. What happened in 1926 was the Iron Company went out of business because of technical problems with the manufacture and the use of the charcoal iron boiler tube. Federal regulations and caused a lot of problems for steam power. It was a very dangerous process to make steam, and there was a lot of industrial accidents, which caused some of the reason for the Iron Company losing its business. But at one time, it was the largest and the only manufacturer of charcoal iron boiler tubes in the world. They had worldwide offices, worldwide connections, and trained locomotives all over the world used Parkesburg charcoal iron boiler tubes in their engines. The other thing that helped their demise was the invention or the use of steel in boiler tubes as a cheaper way to save money for the railroad. The large steel companies of the time were developing, and they were again squeezing out the little guy to produce and promote their product. So steel became the main source of boiler tubes after Mr. Beale closed in 1926. And also steam power was losing its use because of gasoline engines and diesel were being developed. And eventually in the late 40s, trains of steam power engines finally met their demise. Steam engines are still here, but they're mainly for tourist attractions or special rides. When the Iron Company closed in 26, the Depression came. That was hard on Parkesburg because there was a lot of unemployed people from the Iron Company. A lot of them found employment in Lukens and Coatesville at the time. World War II came and a lot of people went to the military. And again, a lot of former employees of the Iron Company went to work for Lukens because they were in war production during the War II. After World War II, everybody came back and the town started to expand and houses were built. And again, small industries came to town. Commercial businesses were doing well. and boomed until the late 80s, early 90s. Okay, by the time of 1972, we had been here for 100 years, and the town thought it was important to have a celebration. So they formed a corporation and sold stock. You could buy it for $1 a share and to make money for their centennial event. They hired a professional promoting company called the Rogers Company out of Ohio. They sent a man here to organize and promote the centennial activities. It was a well-organized program, and the idea of the program was to get everybody in town involved in the centennial activities in some way. And I would venture to say I was part of that because I grew this beard in 1971 as one of the beard growing for people in town, and I have not shaved. I have not been barefaced since. It used to be brown. Now it's like, but it was a very exciting time for the centennial and well organized. And they had many activities to do during the week. The 100th actual date of the anniversary was March 1st, 1972. That was when the papers were signed with the Harrisburg government to create the borough. So on March 1st, 1972, we had a big birthday party at the Octorara High School where we had speakers and celebration displays of many things from Parkesburg. On July 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 72, they had events in the park and in town. They had special days for certain activities. There was a pageant in the park, which means on the south side of town, they put up a gigantic scaffolding for staging. And many people in town were involved in a pageant, literally hundreds. And everybody had a part to play. Many events of the week were, first of all, Sunday was a religious day, Heritage Day. Churches participated. Monday was Homecoming and Senior Citizens Day, special events for people to come back and visit town. And every night, they had the pageant in the park. The stands could hold at least 400 people. And every night we had a sold out crowd of 400 people in the park watching a pageant, which had, again, 300 people involved in its presentation. Exciting time. On Tuesday was Youth Day, youth activities. They had bag races. Boy Scouts had special events in the park. They had home run derby. For the Phillies came out and had an event for home run derby for the kids to play. They had girls softball games. On Wednesday was bargain day. That's when the merchants of the commercial side of town had special days, special sales, and special events. On Thursday was Ladies' Day in the Minch Park. There were special events for that. Dress up in your centennial garb and go down to the park and promenade. Friday was Veterans Day. Veterans were honored. Many groups came in town. They had a concert, a marching band from Evergreen Army Grounds came and played a concert in the park. Most every night there was some kind of a musical activity in town, in the park or in the area of the firehouse at the time. On Saturday, they had Good Neighbor Day, which when they had a gigantic parade, which lasted for 2 hours. There was literally thousands and thousands of people on the streets of Parkesburg as the parade wound through town up Main Street, down First Avenue, over to the park on out Fourth Avenue. There was literally thousands of people here watching the parade. And at the same time, the fire company had a special event where they housed a new fire truck. They had bought a new fire truck prior to during the 1972, and there's a process where the firemen get together and have an event, a celebration, and they supposedly push the fire truck into the firehouse with a little help from the fire truck itself. But that was a great big event, and that grew thousands of people for that event. So it was a great day, and one of the events they had a special that day when Parade was over, they had a shaving event at the firehouse where people that had grown a beard, and there was lots of them, they had their beard shaved off. Well, I didn't have mine shaved off. I wanted to keep it for posterity and the 150th anniversary. So I think there are possibly 3 men in the area community that still have a beard from 1972. I don't know what I'll shave it off yet or not. I'm not sure. But anyway, I have a daughter who never saw me barefaced. Um, one interesting product of the event was this book called Parkesburg, which was produced for the centennial. It's a good history of the town, and it has a nice history. And also it has many pictures of people to get people to participate in the events. So they formed these Brothers of the Brush groups, look like this, where you belong to a group and they had a name like the Borough Council Brush Boys or something like that. And then they had groups of ladies, and they were here's a bunch of ladies from the fire company auxiliary. They were the fire company bells, and they had their costumes and dresses and bonnets and whatever else. So it was involving everybody in town. Even kids had suits and dresses they could wear. So the fun thing about it was that everybody was involved. You felt part of it. Prior to the week of events, every Friday night we had a promenade over on First Avenue, where again you dressed up in your centennial garb with your hat and your parasol and whatever. And they had some men called the Keystone Cops, which are old movie cops. They had guys dressed like Keystone Cops, and they went around to check to see if you had your button on, which allowed you to grow a beard. If you didn't have a button, they would put you in a jail by the old hotel, which was a little room made out of sticks and looked like a jail. So you were put in jail for a few minutes, and everybody laughed at you and cheered you. It was kind of a fun event. So you promenade around town, and if you didn't have your proper garb on or your buttons, which you had to purchase, you might be arrested by a Keystone Cop. Quite a happy event. 100 Years of Progress play. Here's a copy of the program for the pageant to play. The first scene was our celebration, which included many young people. And there's a video of this activity. Scene 1 was our celebration. Scene 2 was Echoes of the Past. Scene 3 was the settlement, and there was many people involved in all these different acts, so to speak. Scene 4, How to Raise a Barn. And again, this was a stage, probably the stage was 100-foot long and maybe 40 feet deep. And everybody came in from the sides, and they assembled up on the ball field now, because the stage was down where the Little League baseball team is, just south of the present day baseball field. That's where it was. Okay, then we had a scene on the Bible. We had a scene on schooling. The 7th scene was progress. The Civil War was scene 8, and incorporation was scene 9. Years of growth was scene 10. Scene 11 was the gay 90s. And scene 12, the surge for freedom. Scene 13 was ups and downs. And scene 14 was again the war, which was military. Scene 15 was leaders of tomorrow. There was a lot of young kids at the time. Scene 16 was today and tomorrow. And that was the last scene. They had 16 scenes or acts with hundreds of people involved. Some of them were in multiple scenes. This is all live every night for 5 days. Okay, this is a picture of the pageant with relative to the patriotic event act. This is what it looked like in the park on stage. Again, these are all local residents dressed up in various costumes. My job was to take care of the beard growing contest. I was the beard growing coordinator. And we had beard judgings. We had, and I was in charge of that. I was in charge of organizing the Brothers of the Brush groups, get them together and have their pictures and take care of that part of it. At the time, I was a borough councilman. And all the borough council people at the time got to ride in a horse-drawn carriage, which was a highlight for me because I had never rode in a horse-drawn carriage up to that point. So it was a very nice event. It was just a super day in Parkesburg. It's hard to relate it to people now, but it was spectacular. Our family was involved. They all dressed. My kids were in the pageants. My son was in the pageant. Well, then one day they had a rock band for the kids. At the kids' day, when they had youth day, they had a rock. The military day, they had helicopter landed, troops got out. My feeling is I had a wonderful experience 50 years ago. And I think, even though this will be a smaller event, I think everybody that has an opportunity should participate and do at least come to the event in May, because it's very special, kind of extra special, because this is a Memorial Day event and a sesquicentennial event.
Thank you for tuning in this evening for the first of a two-part presentation, a celebration 150 years in the making. We hope you enjoyed this evening's program and look forward to seeing you in December when we air the second part of this two-part presentation, when we learn more about Parkesburg history, as well as reveal some exciting details about the upcoming 150th Parkesburg Anniversary Celebration festivities that are scheduled for May 2022. Please mark the date. This is one program you definitely want to see. Have a wonderful evening. We look forward to seeing you next month. Good night.